This is Chinese actor Yu Menglong, also known as Alan Yu. Alan allegedly ended himself jumping from a building on September 11th. Days later, we now know that this wasn't a simple case of self-inflicted, but rather something more sinister, perhaps multiple people involved. He was ended by others after a series of torment, gang form of you-know-what, and silence for knowing about a money laundering scheme within the entertainment circle. Chinese internet has exploded with discussions and public opinion outcries over what possibly could be the darkest event of Chinese entertainment. And so we're here to get to the facts of it. The latest update is that all topics around Alan's death has been scrubbed. Only a few official topics are still up on Weibo, which is the premier Chinese social media. And many users reported that they got banned for talking about this topic. On September 10th, around 8 p.m. in the evening, Alan and others in the entertainment industry, they were in an apartment complex in Beijing. This quote-unquote party resulted in Yu's departure from life. The original version that first got attention on social media came from a Weibo account named Detective Yan, who stated that Alan had dinner with friends. Drinks were flowing. Around 2 a.m. though, he locked himself inside a bedroom. And around 6 a.m. when the party was finished and his friends noticed that he was missing, a body had been found on the ground below the building. Allegedly, he had 2 Rolexes in his pockets from his friends and that the mesh of his window had been poked open. So at this point, when this just first happened, we had no idea, no information about where this took place or what floors this happened at or where in the country this was in, who was involved, who took part of this in this party. And soon we learned from that the first name and location popped up belonged to a man named Li Ming, whose pen name is Jing Guangguang. Now, for clarity's sake, we'll just call him G, and he is a TV scriptwriter. The location of this party was in the Chaoyang district of Beijing, one of the most affluent areas in Beijing, home to embassies, businesses, and luxury shops. The party was hosted by G and featured many prominent figures in the entertainment industry in China, including Alan himself. The party allegedly happened on the 5th floor of the building. From the photos circulating online, you can see that the mesh frame of the window is like this, which either you have to cut that mesh open or somehow get it to be popped off from the window, which are usually stabilized in a way that you can't really do that. There is no way that he, in the conditions of being super drunk, would be able to do that himself and just fall off from the window. So this eliminates Alan's so-called intoxicated self-falling scenario, which leads us to believe that other things were involved, such as perhaps maybe Alan was depressed and he was looking for a way out. But this also was contradicted by that there is no accounts from friends and families and colleagues of Alan that he ever was depressed or was looking for a way out. So of course, this led to the possibility or speculation that this was caused or done by some other people who were at the party, perhaps one or perhaps many involved in the crime. Now, if you look at the post time, the post from Detective Yan, this Weibo user, was about 7 hours ahead of the official announcement that came from the studio of Alan, which is essentially like the fan page or official page of the celebrity. So they were 7 hours ahead of the official announcement, which means that they obtained this news or this shocking piece of information somehow through a channel that had known about this prior to their official page. So people started to speculate about the possibility of this being a murder. And so in response, on the official studio page of Alan, a message was posted allegedly from Alan's mother. And the mother was saying how let's all respect Alan's final wishes, let's be respectful, not speculate, and that the police had published a report ruled basically this as not of a case of murder, but rather this was an accident of intoxicated behaviors and so on. And then when this went public, it immediately drew more scrutiny over what exactly was said here. Now, there are some issues with this post. First of all, the police hasn't publicly made any investigative reports on this case yet, and so somehow the mother of Alan had already come out and basically told everyone to just respect what the police report was saying. But yet we have no official public police report. And the second point is that these, for context by the way, these so-called studio accounts or work studio accounts of certain celebrities, they're basically managed by their talent agency or by their agent in a way to serve as the official page for that celebrity. But for the case of Alan, both of his studios, his talent sort of PR side of things had been canceled and dissolved prior to his death. And so basically there was no one or a team that was actually working for him. And then makes you wonder, where did this announcement come from? Who was running Alan's page at the time of this incident? And so that obviously drew a lot of scrutiny as well. And in the end, everyone's kind of confused about the situation because you now have people pretending possibly to be the mother of Alan, telling you to stop looking around. And if you followed the China news side of things for a while, you know that when people tell you to stop looking around, that means something really fishy is going on. And if you really think about it, if these people were trying, or they were on Alan's side and were trying to find out about the truth, wouldn't they support or at least come out, if anybody at the party were really trying to be on Alan's side, that they would come out and publicly say that, yes, I was there and, something happened. And the opposite is true. His fan base has been silent. The people involved have been silent. People that were asked whether or not they were at the party have come out publicly to refute the claim that they were at the party. Some people outright said that they simply weren't in the city at the time. In every single way possible, people were denying the involvement with Alan's passing. Here's where the first point that makes it really interesting, and people have been talking about this, is how a social media account, Detective Yan, was able to get this information about 7 hours prior to the official announcement. For any sort of analysis on this, you would imagine that the information came from someone who is either a participant at that party or had been maybe a first responder or a neighbor or the security guard or even maybe the doctors and nurses at the hospital who handled Alan afterwards. Somebody that was directly in this sort of chain of the series of events had to have been there to witness something, to tell this account, Detective Yan, to post about this and to have certain amounts of details that basically kickstarted this whole thing. And that really means that somebody somewhere in China wanted this story to be investigated. They wanted the internet to know about this, to not keep it a silent, down under the table sort of investigation, but rather a very public one that involved the whole of society approach, which has become, if you've really been following China news, a good way to pretend like, even though we have this heavy amount of censorship, that we can still get some form of truth in today's China, which truth is often very rare. But that's kind of going off topic. But my point is, it's very strange for an account to know about this or post about this hours ahead of the official announcement. And by the way, that post, the original one that I was talking about, has since been deleted. Thousands of other posts have also been deleted around the case of Alan. And that's just the beginning. That's just the original story. Over the next week or so, this is where things started to evolve, right? People started digging things up. People started to find photographic evidence. Internet sleuth at work. So this was just days after the initial version of the story was released. Now, this is very different from how the CCP usually approaches censorship when it comes to celebrity news. Now, if you take the example of Chris Wu, he was found to be, involved with a bunch of different things, but eventually he ended up in jail. And this whole thing was viewed as this shift of attention from other issues to focus on the celebrity drama, right? To really amplify all of the issues with the entertainment industry, to basically use that as an excuse to crack down on the entertainment industry. Except this time is quite different. Same thing with how they handled the whole ideas of you don't want feminine men in this whole Chinese music idol / celebrity situation as well. So a lot of that was to be used as an excuse to crack down on the entertainment industry. So oftentimes you actually get this amplification of the bad side of the entertainment industry, controlled amplification, obviously, but this time it was the opposite. They had a massive crackdown on what information was being allowed to be shared about the entertainment industry. So it was the opposite of the previous celebrity news. And even comparing this to some of the stories recently, like the Shaolin monk, Shi Yongxin, the abbot that was found to be guilty of all sorts of bad things too, that monk story was allowed to be amplified in certain degrees to show that there's a lot of corruption there and needed to be, switched up, right? So compared to those kind of big scandals, this one seemed like they really, really didn't want things to explode. Like I said, many people who are allegedly, being accused of being involved went silent or denied their involvement. G is an interesting one. G suddenly then deleted most of his social media page stuff. His account went private on IG, his account went private on Instagram, and so he basically made it seem like he was suspicious. And why would you have to delete anything if you're innocent, right? Maybe his company thought, oh yeah, it's a good chance to, you don't want to get any involvement or be tied to this, but just deleting it on the spot make you seem more suspicious. Over the next week or so, the story has evolved from the apparent accident to a very deliberate case of others offing this guy. One of the first reasons is his rejection or his fighting against the hashtag #MeToo movement, or in Chinese it's called the hidden rule of the entertainment industry. I've done a video on this specifically for the female celebrities in China, what they have to go through. But I didn't touch on the male side because this particular case with Alan, it was a guy who was very fond of Alan's looks and appearance and wanted to spend the night with him. And so one of the first scenario, again, this is not facts, right? This is what the information is out there is telling us, is that Alan in this party was basically lured into the party, got him drunk, and somebody wanted to grape him. And after he woke up, he was angry, he wanted to call the police. He didn't want this to be silent. He didn't want what happened to him to be, basically part of the industry, right? This in China, the Harvey Weinsteins are just CCP officials or they're adjacent, goons in the different industries. He wanted this to be, he's a fighter at heart, right? So that's the story. But in turn, obviously, they wanted to silence him, and it turned into, this murder case. Why is that a sort of a valid claim? Because, well, there was another rumor back in 2020 that a woman had been, had found Alan, wanted to be Alan's sugar mom, let's put it that way. And Alan refused, and that woman had enough power to shadow ban Alan from the industry. No appearances in films and TV dramas for 3 years, actually 5 now, this is 2025. And just so now Alan was ready to step back into the screen, that this whole thing happened. I mentioned there's a man and Alan, the name that came up, his name is Qi Xin, and let's just call him Q. And so Q is a film producer who allegedly had ties to, someone claims he's the bastard child of a top CCP official named Cai Chi. Others claims that he's a distant relative of Xi Jinping. Regardless, one thing it seems to make sense is that he is involved in the entertainment industry. He's a film producer. He has some level of power, right? And so for people that know it in the circle and who have been involved in this party would probably know that this is not some far-fetched claim. And so that's the information that's been circulating online. And then to go even a step further, they say that the initial party, which claims to originally had only 6 people, is actually now expanded to 17 people. So 17 people were involved, and this was, this turned from a single person raped to basically a massive form of gang rape. There's things like torture, there's just a lot of bad things that happen there. Now, specifically, Q is the one that's at the center of planning this, because Q had basically been a longtime fan of Alan, and some were outrageously claimed to actually be even the core fan base of Alan, that he helped Alan build essentially a fan base. And this also kind of lines up with why the fan base in China they're really calm. They're silent for no reason, right? Normally, if they're a celebrity, something happened to them, they'd be the first and probably the most vocal about what happened to that celebrity. But on Chinese social media, you don't really see that side of the people. You see the general internet users who are mourning him, but you don't see the fan base do so, right? So it's kind of interesting. But this Q guy claims to be a longtime fan of Alan, and to the point of obsession. So this night was basically a setup. So the next version is even worse because it involves videos, alleged recordings of that night. You hear Alan screaming, and more videos show this picture of basically he was chased around in the parking lot. You had security guards recording versions of video. You had people across in a different apartment building recording, what had been happening in that particular room. And we also had learned that this took place, remember, 17 people on the 6th floor of the actual building, of not just some random floors. Again, the ending is the same. He was offed because he had been tortured, he had been raped, and all these things happened to him, and they wanted to silence him. The more recent version involved him being on the ground twice. The first time was an accident because they had threatened him. What did they threaten him for? Well, he allegedly had a USB stick collecting information on money laundering of this group involving Q and G and other people. And so they wanted to get that USB stick from him, but he swallowed it into his stomach. And so they were trying to get him to puke it out, but he wouldn't do it. And then that's when they accidentally slipped, and that was the first time. And then he was dragged to the hospital, where then you have pictures of the second time he fell. He had a different type of clothes, there was like white bandages around his stomach and all of these things. Again, there's no way to prove if any of this is real. This is just where the story is going. And so yeah, that it basically ended with him, he perished, and because of the money laundering involvement, but also because of the other stuff like the tornatures and the grapes and all of that. Now, money laundering isn't something new to the CCP. A lot of celebrities have been involved in it. I talked about that in the video about the female celebrities as well. It's not something that's uncommon. So this is not, again, none of these outrageously looking or seemingly outrageous claims are actually that far-fetched, because, you know, this is it's sort of the hidden part of the Chinese entertainment circle. So here is my actual analysis. This was not a simple case of him offing himself. This is clearly a cover-up. And the people involved, they're not speaking. The people who know about it, they're not allowed to speak. People have been threatened. People are silent about the situation because they know that it involves too many people. And for this typical case, clearly there's a tie to the CCP. And if you are familiar with anything that happens in China, it's always political. Somebody powerful has always been involved. If I have time, I'll tell you more about this in later episodes, but I'll just quickly tell one case. The son of Lin Jihua, who is a former CCP official, his son was involved in this massive crash in Beijing with a sports car, and two girls were inside, and basically it ended up turning from his son's problems into a political problem for his dad. And then the dad, eventually it led to the downfall of Zhou Yunkan, who was a former CCP official who tried to start a coup back in the days. But if you want to know about that story, I'll specifically talk about it in another episode. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know if you want to see that. But currently, we don't have any public police reports on the investigation yet. This might come out in the following days. But I think so far, based on the reaction of the censorship, it's likely going to be that this was an accident sort of storyline, okay? They're not going to stray any further from that. And the very fact that I kind of briefly talked about this already, but the censorship didn't immediately shift the attention to the problems of the entertainment industry means that this was not a motivated move by the political class to crack down on the entertainment industry through his death. But in fact, that this was an untimely situation that involved some people. Now, clearly you can say that this was some CCP person wanted to off this guy just for the sake of doing that. That's not how, what I'm trying to say. But I am saying that once this happened, the attention shifting should have happened right away, but it didn't. In fact, it got worse in terms of the censorship. Now, see, another point that's real is that these officials, they use the men and women in the industry, in the circle, as play toys, and obviously this is nothing new. Those that know Hollywood well would know that this is basically the same thing, except it's just those producers are really more like the officials. Out of the ordinary to assume that a certain dude or certain girl would be interested in Alan's because of his looks. I mean, he's a male star, right? And through, getting with them, they can reach a new height in the industry, they can become popular, they can rise to new heights and all of those things. That's just the stuff we already know. So I think moral of the story is that the tragic end of Alan has basically spelled out the dark side of Chinese entertainment, which unfortunately is political. It's just we don't know who is really involved. But no matter what, he was awfully treated. I can only say this, it's the most unfortunate thing to happen to someone. And I just wish that, there's better outcomes than this, but that's the reality in China. It's just many things are very brutal at its core, and this is just one of them. You could say that it's the characteristics of entertainment blended with the uniqueness of the flavors of the CCP to give us this thing that we're way too familiar with in Hollywood. All right, thank you so much for watching this episode. Hope you enjoy the content. Again, let me know your thoughts in the comments, what you think happened to him. And yeah, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and like this video as well so that it can reach more people. And thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.